Coming into early access on the 16th of October this year, the new MMORPG inspired title Fellowship will provide a dungeon-focused experience for 4 people, no leveling, no open world, no PvP, no hassle, to get to fast-paced group content. If you are unfamiliar with World of Warcraft's Mythic Plus experience, or want to know the basic tools of each hero and the game system, or just like my deep, dark and sexy voice, this video is for you, so let's get right into it before I tell you to like and subscribe. Damn it, did it again! First, let me sum up the game in a few words. We choose one of many heroes to play, each with their own role, split into tanks, damage dealers and healers. All 3 are necessary to form a party, which is formed up in the base called Stronghold. Through a simple queuing method, we are jumping into a dungeon with either 1 or 3 bosses to beat. On the way to those bosses, we have to clear out enough enemies of the dungeon to reach 100%, shown in the top right corner, which allows us, after beating the boss, to receive loot from a treasured chest. In this chest we find new items to equip our hero, enhancing their power either through simple stat upgrades or, in some rare cases, gaining new abilities, but more on those later. Once the dungeon is cleared, we get back to the stronghold, equip the new item, open the progression star map to gain new abilities and talent points to allocate in a simple yet very impactful talent tree. Through many more dungeons and items, we gain more and more power to challenge more difficult dungeons with tougher enemies, new mechanics, new bosses and unique loot. And that is basically the game in a nutshell. We run through dungeons, beat bosses, gain loot and get stronger, run through dungeons, beat bosses, gain loot and get stronger, and so on and so forth. Now that we've summed up the game, let's go a bit deeper and check out what you need to know to have an easier starting point in this new title. For the MMO veterans, this point might be unnecessary, yet a few things in the Holy Trinity system of Fellowship might be a bit different than you know, so let's check out the 3 roles of the mentioned Holy Trinity, being tank, healer and damage dealer. The tank is the one that is the focus of the enemies. The currently 2 tanks have many tools to keep the mobs attacking them through taunting abilities, while they have to keep up their damage mitigation. To keep the so-called aggro high, the tank should be the first to run into a group, since Fellowship has an initiate aggro burst for the first target the enemies recognize. So no ninja pulling in this game, or the group may wipe, especially on higher difficulty levels. The next role is the healer, which has the job to keep the group alive. The currently 2 healers have various means to regenerate lost health on their allies, while in Fellowship they are far more but simple healing tools. Both have damaging abilities and skills to reduce the effectiveness of the enemies, apart from healing spells. Another key ability is to cleanse so-called debuffs of their allies, which in many situations is a key factor to finishing a boss or even a simple group fight. The last group being the damage dealers, also called DPS, which are focusing on dealing the most amount of damage on the enemies while trying to take in as little damage as possible. This could either be done by avoiding numerous area of effect attacks, which are visibly shown, or through interrupting enemy spellcasts. For this action, every damage dealer, as well as the tanking heroes, have a utility skill that stops an enemy from finishing a spell, which in the higher difficulty levels is necessary or the whole group might die. So simply focusing on doing the highest damage numbers is the best way to lose a round. So don't do that. Since we have now covered the roles, let's assume you've picked your preferred hero. Now it is time to set up your UI and keybinds, which in Fellowship is surprisingly easy to do. The UI can be changed in various ways through a great and simple option by pressing the escape key or click settings in the top right corner. Just as easy as changing the UI is setting up the keybinds. Right click on every slot on the action bar allows us either to change the keybind or the spell that fits into the specific slot. Having changed everything to the way you like, you can test out each hero at the training dummies in the stronghold, allowing you to get comfortable with each playstyle before you jump into your first dungeon. Feeling good about your settings, you can now launch your first dungeon either through the quick play or a search for a contender dungeon with the many difficulties. For the beginning, I always recommend the quick play, which is a fast way to get into the game and also have an easy first experience, since the difficulty setting of the quick play is one of the easiest. It is also good to know that this mode resets all players' gear so that you won't be rushed through by a high-end player with great items, so you can go through the level at the right pace. In this quick play, the rewards for a finished dungeon are not gear pieces like you would expect, but rather tokens which are account-wide, but we will look at those and how to use them in a bit. The second option to find a group is through challenges, which are split into 4 leagues, rewarding you with better gear the higher you ramp up in the difficulty levels, which will be the next point we'll talk about. But first, a quick side note: if you want to know which role is currently required for a specific difficulty, the dungeon tool shows which roles are currently queuing up. So if you are playing as a DPS and can't get a dungeon invite and still want to play, check out this tool right here and maybe switch to another role for a quick invite. The more difficult dungeons you clear, the higher your dungeon score gets, and the higher your optional difficulties will be revealed to you. However, at some point you will reach the bottleneck of your current league, which means you have to clear a specific dungeon in time to unlock the next league. Each league comes with higher item rewards and more dangerous dungeon options, with new abilities for not only the bosses but also for simple mob groups. Take the Dungeon Sailor's Abyss for example. Here we have specific mobs called Horod Corsairs, which I'm sure I mispronounced, which just deal heavy damage to the tank in the Contender League. But in the Adept League, they furthermore do a cleaving hit that leaves their target with a bleeding debuff, which ramps up in stacks. That means that not only does the tank have to keep them facing away from the group, but further they have to start running once the stacks are ramping too high. Otherwise they will fall, and so will the whole group. Once you've started clearing out dungeons, you're gonna see 2 improvements for your character, which need to be actively searched for. The first one is the star map, which has 2 paths you'll passively walk on. First is on the left hand side, with new abilities you'll unlock for your class, new talent rows to individually impact your gameplay, and the unlocking of your character's ultimate skill called Spirit Ability. This progresses with every dungeon you finish, regardless of its difficulty. So you might try to do some quick play dungeons to quickly gain the valuable new abilities and talents, more on the talents later, or you can slowly grind your way through the leagues and obtain new items as well as the mentioned abilities and talents. It is all up to you. The second path on the star map is linked to your dungeon score and progress throughout the leagues. The more dungeons you clear, the higher your score gets, and the more you unlock with not only talent points, gold coins or other resources, but further with skins you can unlock to make your hero sparkle and pop out. As many MMORPGs and also other RPG games in general, Fellowship is just as focused around the hunt for better and more powerful gear. This is the second progression system of the game. Each hero has their own gear pieces to obtain, split into various pieces for the typical body parts like fingers, hands, chest, head, shoulders, knees and toes, and furthermore we can obtain relics and weapons which have their own new spells we use during fights. Each item empowers our heroes with stats split into main and secondary stats, like Ardios as a fire mage requires intelligence as a main stat, while Helena needs strength, although look at her arms, does she really need more? Each piece can randomly drop in specific dungeons, with even set bonuses that can be obtained. Last but not least, we have to talk about the fact that each and every piece of item can be further enhanced through a farmable currency. Most dungeons provide us with not only a gear piece for a successful run, but further drop gold or other resources we can utilize in a few ways. Those resources can be spent in the Stronghold. This is a hangout location for all players in between runs. There we have vendors, a stable to equip a mount for faster movement speed, a scrapper to destroy items we don't need anymore, and even a reforging option to change items. But do you remember the tokens we obtain in quick play? This vendor right here sells us entry-level gear for heroes that are needing a bit of a boost. For example, if you want to try out Mako and are lacking gear with her, you can use the tokens you farmed on another hero to get an easier beginning gear-wise. This gear, however, is not upgradable, unlike the items we obtain through the challenges in the leagues. So let's visit the blacksmith, where we can upgrade our gear in exchange for gold. This way we simply increase the item stats and therefore make our hero more powerful. Next to the blacksmith we have a reforging station, allowing us to use various materials to transform gear pieces and gems. For example, I received gloves, but since my Sylvie already had gloves with a higher item level, I crafted them into shoulder pieces. We can also change the stats of the items to more desirable ones, depending on which stats we want. What a tricky word. But I've glanced past the term gems, which is an additional way to empower our heroes. Those gems can drop in dungeons and can be attached to items with gem slots. Split into different colors, these gems empower our characters in many ways, depending on which colors we have equipped. Furthermore, as mentioned, we have talent points we can allocate to change our characters' playstyles. The talent point system, however, works differently compared to Fellowship's inspiration, which is World of Warcraft. Here we have talent points which we can spend freely on the unlocked talent rows. The difference is that not all talents require the same amount of talent points, and furthermore we can pick not just one talent from a row, but 2 or even 3 to give us more customization options. This way we can experiment with numerous playstyles which we can easily change without any cost or hassle. Just click a talent and the locked points are available again. So after explaining every important system of the game, let's quickly summarize the gameplay to give you an overview. We launch into dungeons, find the route to the boss while clearing enough enemies to reach 100%. The tank keeps the enemies hitting them, the healer keeps their group alive, and the DPS perform the rotation to deal the most amount of damage. At the boss we keep their mechanics in mind, which are further shown in form of boss cooldowns, and once we beat them we gain loot, equip and enhance those items and try out tougher challenges in higher leagues. And those are the most important parts of Fellowship, which you should know as a new player. For more tips, guides and other videos, consider subscribing, and remember, do not get discouraged if you die. It probably was the tank's fault anyway.